Good morning, everyone. I'm Xuan, GovInsider's Deputy Editor, and welcome to the first session at the Festival of Innovation. We kicked off this morning with a keynote by Justyna Orlowska, who is the Prime Minister's High Representative for Government Technology and Head of GovTech Center in Poland. Now let us turn to two trailblazing visionaries who are joining us in the panel today to share their thoughts on next generation leadership. The world has had an exceptionally tough time over the past 2 years, but we are pulling through, one policy at a time and one innovation at a time. It is the mark of great leadership that we've been able to reach where we are today. The next generation of leaders will certainly inherit an uncertain world. How's the current crisis molding the movers and shakers of the future? And what are tomorrow's public sector pioneers shaping up to be? These are the questions that I'll be bringing to our panelists today. Please join me in welcoming Hongyi, Director of the Open Government Products Unit at GovTech Singapore, and Rika Zikriyyah, Head of the Communication and Marketing Unit at Jakarta Smart City. She'll be representing Pak Yudhistira Nugraha, who is the Director of Jakarta Smart City in Indonesia. Welcome, and thank you very much for joining me this morning. Thank you very much. Now let's start by looking back at some for the Open Government Products team. It's birthed quite a number of COVID-focused innovations. Which of these would you say that you are the proudest of?
It's a bit hard to talk about proudness because a lot of these things that come up. There's a couple things I would say. I think the first one is we're quite proud of the ART testing, the rapid antigen testing system that the team's deployed. So if you guys have if everyone's going to mass events or weddings and things like that, you need to get tested before you go in, right? So this is a 20-minute test system that goes in, and this is sort of obviously a very logistical nightmare because you need to have all the tests there, and you need to get results to people in a quick moment. Yeah. So we came up with a pretty interesting mechanism where you sort of get a card with a QR code on it, and then you submit your you register your test results, and you get the test results through that QR code fairly smoothly, which we thought was quite neat.
Amazing. And Rika, turning to you, for Jakarta Smart City, your mission is to use tech to serve citizens better across all parts of government. So how has Jakarta Smart City pivoted in the last 2 years to cope with the pandemic?
Okay, so basically in the last 2 years, here we in Jakarta have built a super apps called Jaki. So this is actually an application to answer all the needs of the people in Jakarta. And in relations to Corona, the pandemics for the last 2 years, actually one day after the first case of COVID was found in Jakarta, we developed some website that called corona.jakarta.go.id. That website up until now is already developed. At first, we only put the new cases of COVID-19 that happens in Jakarta. But now the website is already we can see, we can what we call it, register to get the vaccine for the people, and also we can see what collaborations that happens between the government and also other stakeholders in related to how to solve the pandemic, such as the collaboration to give the SMEs some trainings or some strategies to develop in the midst of this pandemics. And also the website also has been the platform for all the stakeholders that need the newest data or the reliable program or activities that developed by the government of Jakarta. That is the websites to search for all the things that related to to COVID-19 and also to all the projects that related to the pandemic. I think that is our our projects that have happened for the last 2 years.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. I think as leaders of your organization or as someone in that leadership role, I can imagine that, or I cannot even imagine actually the entire pivot or the process of pivoting in terms of when you're in that position to lead your people. So what would you say is the biggest challenge of leading in a pandemic, and how did you approach that challenge? Hongyi, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, of course. I think the biggest challenge is prioritization, because normally, like when you do a project, you have a few luxuries, right? One, you can sort of like take your time to sort of scope it out, do your user research, really figure out exactly what it is. And if something doesn't really quite work, yeah, it's all right. You sort of like try again. It's sort of the process of innovation exploration, which takes time. But when you have something like this, it is very particularly time sensitive, right? Every week there's that you don't do a job well, it's another exponential increase. And so you sort of need to be like fairly ruthless in like cutting down the scope of your projects and really, really focusing on like only the things that matter, and you're trying to guess what really matters and what doesn't, and you're with the resources. So yeah, you need to be very, very focused. I would say that's the thing that is probably the hardest part, like knowing what is really the minimum viable product that you can get out.
And do you have, maybe for some of the products, were there some things that you really had to cut back on for certain features?
Yeah, tons. Yeah, so for example, for the appointment booking system, like there's a whole bunch of stuff that you want to do. You want to show people like a breakdown of different slots. You want to show people ideally you want to intelligently allocate people to places to reduce congestion. You have to cut that out. But instead of doing that, what we did was we just sort of like had like these red and green labels that we just manually slapped on every day. And so like every morning we'll get a report from people about, okay, which places are crowded, which places not, and then we'll like move the labels around. So, obviously not as cool or automated, but it sort of works and it's quick to do.
Yeah.
Then let me see what else. Yeah, so another example is, for example, for the like home quarantine system, like, during quarantine, you need to install the app to do like daily health reports and things like that. It was never really designed for like a whole bunch of different agencies to use. Like, it was just like put together literally in about a week or two. And so one of the things that we cut out was like this ability to like onboard and sign on quickly. And so whenever we have a new agency who is like, let's say, because there's the Immigration Authority, there's Ministry of Health, there's a few different people who use it. We try to reuse old accounts as far as possible because that's the fastest way of getting someone up and running rather than set something up from scratch.
Fantastic. And I think for Rika then, turning to you, what would you say was Jakarta Smart City's biggest challenge in, leading and adapting to the pandemic, and how did the team adapt to that?
Okay, so I think the main obstacle here is coordination in Jakarta, because when we talk about solving these pandemics, many actors are involved, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes in Jakarta, coordination is still very difficult because sometimes each sector still see problems from its own sectors, not like from the perspective of multi-sectoral point of view. So until now, we are still working on coordinations and also for a collaboration with all sectors, both from government sectors and from other stakeholders like the private company and also the startups and other stakeholders in ecosystems. And also other things that also a problem here in Jakarta, it's the understanding of the citizens for the digital transformations, because as you know, not many people know about the digital technology and stuff, and also the for example, the internet connections. Before the pandemics, not many of Jakarta citizens, not the 100% of Jakarta citizens covered by the really good internet connections, right? So it's really hard for us. It's very challenging for us how to make all the business, the government services before the pandemic. It's all done by manual, right? Manually. But now we have to shift all to the digitalizations. So it's quite challenging for us to cover all the needs from all the citizens, and for the coordination and also collaborations inside the government and also for the outside government with the other outer stakeholder.
Right. And I think now that we sort of have been in this situation for close to 2 years, looking forward, what are some of the priorities that you have for your organizations? Hongyi?
Priorities. Let's see. Well, so a couple things. So we've gotten, thankfully we've gotten most people in Singapore vaccinated. So I think it's like the biggest, that was the biggest priority for a while, but that's sort of winding down because people already got their jabs. So the priority now is mostly on sort of like testing infrastructure, testing infrastructure and like, verification of results. So it's shifting from sort of like the consumer side of things into the back end where we sort of take all the vaccination data, and like try to make it available to different agencies who need it. So for example, when you're checking into different places, when people are like, when people come in from overseas and they need to sort of have their vaccination records verified, we need to make sure we have that up and running. That's what we're focusing on now. Then let me see. Then there's a bunch of stuff like, so testing, and then there's a sort of a renewed focus on how we do sort of quarantine, because as we sort of move to an endemic situation and like you have and you're going to just have more community cases, and people are doing home quarantine as opposed to sort of like going to the hospital. That is a shift that we need to sort of get ready for. Well, not even get ready for. That's something that we're actively doing, and so we're trying to get people. So we're putting together, we're sort of adapting some of our systems so that people who have COVID but aren't infectious or whatever, like they can sort of stay at home. We need to have a way for them to sort of check in, report, keep track of who's at home, who's not, and like if there are any sort of worrying signs from there.
Right. And Rika, what about Jakarta Smart City? What are some of the priorities that you have for the upcoming year?
So our future priority is, of course, vaccinating all the residents in Jakarta, because currently almost 10 million of Jakarta residents have been vaccinated, but it's only like 7 million of them are Jakarta residents. So as in our data, we have like 12 million of Jakarta residents, so we still have like 5 million of the residents that hasn't been vaccinated from up until now. And also we are now also developing health infrastructures, because the health infrastructures is the one that really suffering from this pandemics, right? And now we are trying to develop more reliable health infrastructures in the future. Of course, we don't want this kind of pandemic happens again in the future, but when something happens in the health sectors, then we already have like a really good health infrastructures. And also the digitalizations in the health sectors also our priorities, because with the digitalization, the services, it's more easy to target the community, and also because up until now, in some of the area, still the data is still manually registered, but the really good technology infrastructures in health sectors, it will help us in seeing the bigger picture of this pandemic and also cope with this in the future.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I think now we have seen or heard a bit about how the both of you have led through the pandemic. Now let's get a bit personal to talk about some of the reflections on your own leadership journey. So, Hongyi, what would you say are some lessons that you hold close to your heart from your own journey?
Lessons. I would say a few things. First one is I think you need to prioritize. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff you need to get very quickly, but your limiting resource actually is the sort of like energy of your team. Right? Like if this was like a 3-month thing or 6-month thing, you can sort of just like power through, you don't have to worry too much about it. But like given that we're close on 2 years now, people get tired, they work remotely, they're sort of pulling late nights to try and get things out and trying to get things done, and it's hard. And I think that is like, so I think that's sort of the big recognition, right? That the short run limiting thing is like what you can get done in a short amount of time, but over the course of 2 years, the limiting factor is really how much energy people have, and like they get really exhausted. I think that's something, if I'd known a bit earlier, we're going to prioritize a bit better, and so people sort of like don't get as burnt out. The other thing I would have focused on is I would have pushed harder to have I guess more independence between the systems and interconnections. So, everyone has this idea that when you want to do these things, when we bring up new systems, they should have connections, they should have automations, they should have, everything should flow directly. And in an ideal state, that's true. And if you have the time to do that, that's correct. But actually, when you're trying to do something quickly, this interconnectivity between multiple systems is like, so it literally exponentially increases the complexity, because every new dependency is another thing that fails. So we probably would have had an easier time having independent, not automated systems that sort of like came up and sort of did the job with some human beings, like doing the manual work of porting things back and forth. And then once things are stable, then do the joining work. I think that would probably have been a better strategy.
Right. And Rika, if I were to turn to you, who would you say are the mentors or the heroes that inspire you?
Well, for the mentors and heroes, I guess Bapak Yudhistira is also one of the mentors and also heroes in Jakarta in related to how the government cope with pandemic situations. There's also like a couple of others leaders here in Jakarta that what we call it, like push us as the staff how to keep our pace, how to keep our patience, because as Hongyi mentions, after 2 years of coping with these pandemics, of course our energy, it's sometimes it feels like how long it's gonna be, like how long until this pandemic is finished. So we need our leaders, we need our teams that keep on encouraging each other to keep the pace, keep the energy to solve this pandemic and also to cope with this pandemic. So fortunately, we have like even our number one leaders here in Jakarta, our governor, Pak Anies Baswedan, also he always try to support the staffs to what we call it, like to make us remember that this is all we do right now, all the job, all the activities, all these energies to serve the citizens better, to make our Jakarta is the better place to live after these pandemics and afterwards. I think that's the leaders here in Jakarta that is my heroes.
Absolutely. And what about you, Hongyi? Who are some of the mentors and heroes that inspire you or have led you to where you are today?
I don't know about heroes, but like I think there's quite a few things that you read in order to do this. Like I don't remember the name specifically, but like there's this you're sort of reading. I was talking to one of my friends, and he's talking about how you have this in the Silicon Valley. Everyone who like sells a company for like multi-millions of dollars, they either get disillusioned or go crazy. You just sort of realize that having millions of dollars doesn't save you. It doesn't make your life sort of super better, or they sort of just go mad trying to pursue like extreme amounts of wealth, like you see some people do. I think that's something that I think in this last few years has been made very clear to me specifically. Like, it doesn't really matter. Like it doesn't really matter how much intelligence and like how much creativity and whatever you have in like the private sector. If the government doesn't get its job done, like don't work. And you see this all over the world, right? Like places which maybe are not sort of traditionally the wealthiest countries, when they can get things working well, things work well for people. But even places which have like the US and like some of the European countries, when they don't get their government sort of systems right, it doesn't matter how much sort of wealth and creativity and drive and intelligence is in the private sector and like doing all this. You need to get these things done. And I think for me that's sort of been my sort of inspiration. Like talking to these people, it's like there is more there's a sort of like very important mission to do, and I think that is, for me at least, what I found the most inspiring.
Amazing. And I think this was something that both of you touched on as well, the whole idea that teams have been working in this climate for close to 2 years. People need that sort of boost. So how do you motivate your team at this point? Maybe Hongyi, you would like to share some of your tips.
My team at this point. I mean, it's a bunch of things, right? So a few. One, I think you just need to sort of mediate workload, like just overall. You need to give people like when people are, if people aren't working super hard, like obviously you need to push people harder, but like if you're in a situation where people are already working like sort of like nights and weekends, you don't need to squeeze them harder. You don't actually get more output out of them. Actually, ironically, you get better you get more out of people. You sort of encourage them to take a break. And so things like, one of the things I've done is that I sort of like gave people permission to say like, okay, like, I know you guys are doing well. I think it's fine. If there's stuff that you need to turn down, you have my full support to do so. You come talk to me, like we can figure out like what we can turn off, what we can do. Like you're really giving people permission to see that you are like, basically that you are the most valuable resource, that you as the people on the team are the limiting resource, and like you should be protecting that resource even if it comes with some project delivery. I think that's one. Helps quite a lot. You need to celebrate a few small wins. So like, I think people can work at these things quite a bit, but like, the day to day, you get this, you get that done, and it's sort of easy to lose track of bigger picture. But like when something goes out and like you sort of see the results, especially when working in government, right? A lot of times when you work in government, like doing your job well means nothing happened. I mean, like it's not like you launch a product and you have like 1 million people sign up and like make revenue and things like that. It's really just like you did this, and so things didn't explode on you. And I think pointing that out, drawing that in, showing how people are happy, how things are running smoothly, I think that's an important part.
Right. So I'm hearing giving people space to protect their time and also throw the occasional mini party, maybe over Zoom. Maybe for Rika, what about for Jakarta Smart City? How is the team motivated now?
Yes, what we do right now is we try to provide support to the teams, right? Because they already work really hard to solve this all the challenges and all the problems comes with the pandemics, right? We also try to give praise for what has been done, and sometimes we try to like revisit that what we are doing now will also have an impact on us and also to the one that closest to us, because when we try to personalize the works and also to personalize the problems, it's make it easier for the person for the staff members to work to put more effort to the works, right? Because they understand that what they do right now, how to solve this pandemic, how to improve the technology that we have, how to improve the application that we have. Actually, it's not only we do it not only for other people that we don't know who they are, but actually it will related to our closest family members, because this pandemic it affects of all of us and has an impact on us and also to those who closest to us. So when we try to personalize that problem and also the works that we do, it's actually will go back to ourselves. It make it easier for people to put more effort on it, and also when we praise like the hard works that they already done, it will also boost their energy to do even better in the future.
Absolutely. And I think when we think about the next generation of leaders, the people who will be coming up after us, what are some traits do you think will be crucial in them as they step up? Hongyi?
Crucial traits of leaders. I think you need a lot of clarity about what your end goal is. So when things are sort of running fairly stably, I think it's okay to sort of just be a manager. You keep people happy, keep day-to-day running, keep the lights on, But when things are very stormy, it's very easy to get lost in the storm and just get kicked around, because there's a lot of pressures to do a lot of different things, like different people all across the world. And you do need someone who at the end of the day can sort of can very clearly sort of articulate what it is we're trying to do. I think if nothing else, like there's a lot of administrative stuff day to day, you need to hire people, you need to do performance reviews, you need to handle like payroll and things like that. But the thing that will hold the larger organization together is sort of like having people remember why we're doing this. And I think that's going to be that's more critical when things are stormy, like what your bottom line is, because the day-to-day signals are just nonsense. Like, everything's changing, everything is shifting. Your normal indicators don't work anymore. I think that's I think another thing I would look for in some next generation leaders is people who can sort of think like fairly aggressively in terms of like different kind of plays that you can make. So when, again, environment is stable, it is actually, when environment is stable, it makes a lot of sense to have someone who just sort of like, learn the ropes by repetition, right? Oh, this is what we did, work this one thing, and this one. But I think it's very clear that whatever worked well in the past doesn't work that well anymore. It's very shifting. And so there are some people who sort of are okay leaders just because they sort of like have seen and done it all before. But seen and done it all before really doesn't count for very much anymore. And like you need someone who can really like look at a situation and think of like, okay, what are the 7 different like options that we have, and like let's list them all out. And you're not running on autopilot. You're very actively steering in like and seeing what avenues open up, because you just can't run on autopilot because the autopilot path is no longer viable.
Right. And I think we just got a pretty interesting question from our audience. So this comes from the idea that as leaders, one of the important traits is also to listen to the people that you're leading, being very aware of what are the needs. So our question from the audience says, on digital adoption, technical capabilities are key, but so is the people's trust. So how have you worked with citizens or maybe engaged users as you deliver some of the digital tools and services in the pandemic?
Let me see. How have we engaged citizens' trust? Well, a few things. I think first and most importantly, you need to have a very clear view on what's happening on the ground. I think when it's all this stuff happening, especially when you work remotely, it's very easy to sort of lose that sense of like like connection to people. And so you need to track key metrics, like are people using it, are people not, and like never forget the value of sort of anecdotes in looking at these things. So for example, when we were trying to build one of our apps for doing home quarantine, right, when people were there was like I think it was something like only 20% of people were reporting and something like that, and we're trying to figure out why. And you just look at the code, you run it on your phone, you sit in the office, and it all seems to work well, right? I can't figure out why it's not working. So what we ended up doing is that we masked up and like went down to the people's homes, obviously protective gear, and like asked them to show us how it was working on their phone, and asked them to show us how they use their phone. And on quite a few things, right? We found that some people, like when they finish using an app, they sort of like automatically swipe up to close it so that it wasn't doing the background task that it needed to do. Some people like on different devices, like on Samsung versus Huawei versus whatever, they all had different, like slightly different sort of underlying tooling that we didn't plug into correctly, so that it wasn't running. Like really, it becomes, product development became less of a production process, more of an investigative process. You're sort of like going down trying to solve this mystery of like, we have this and it seems to work. Why isn't it working? Really so that's just in terms of like engaging citizens. But in terms of like getting trust with them, I think trust is anchored on sort of 3 main components, right? One, you need to show people that you know what they care about. You need to show people that you care about them enough to do it. And 3, you need to show that you're capable. And I think so in the case of this trusted provider, like making sure we never lie to people, making sure we're always honest with things, and like just being very clear on the information, like making sure communication channels are open. Like the easiest way to break trust is when something goes wrong, not sure what to do, and just like going silent for like a couple of weeks. Having even just having some initial response that you're looking at this or trying to figure out, like making sure the communication channel you and the public stays open, I think is very critical.
Absolutely. And for Rika, how would you say Jakarta Smart City has maybe engaged, partnered with citizens in the process of introducing your digital tools?
So actually, for us here in Jakarta, we try to first, before we develop some product or develop some digital things that we will bring back to the community. Actually, we try to really see what actually needed by the community. So the data of what actually needed by the community when we develop the applications, because when we can read the data that is happening in the community, we will know very well what actually needed by the community, right? So when the product is finished and also applied in the community, the product is already in accordance with the expectation that it is expected by the community. So it will also like solve better the problems that happens in the grassroots level, right?
Absolutely.
So and also in when we have like a product, we also try to communicate. We do like a very big communications and also socializations to the community, because sometimes people hate something that they don't know actually. So when they know better about the application, they know better about the products, by the end of the day they will receive it better than when they still didn't know about the product and also the services provided by the government.
Absolutely. We are entering the final minute of our session today, but before we go, if you could share one word of encouragement with the leaders that will come after you, what would it be, and what would you say? Hongyi, would you like to take this?
Yeah. There are a lot of ways you can be very successful while adding nothing of value to the world. And I think it's very clear that the last couple of years have shown that, there are things that you should try to focus on adding value, because you'll be fine. It doesn't really matter. Like there's a lot that you can do that you have a soft social pressures to pursue. But there are problems that are really, really worth solving, and we need the best people working on them. And so, yeah, I hope you work on something worth working on.
100%. And Rika, what about you? What would you say to the leaders that will come after you?
For me, it's really the importance of the collaboration. So put aside the personal ego or sectoral ego, work together, because many problems we cannot solve it by ourselves. We need to collaborate, we need to coordinate to solve the problems. And please work based on data. Please promote data-driven policy making, because everything comes from the data, good data. It will also produce the really good policy afterwards. And also try to solve something try to solve some problems out of the box. Please put your creativity in solving problems, because sometimes we cannot do something really like only on a regular basis. But when we try to put the creativity, it will also make the problem solving also better.
100%. Thank you so much, Hongyi and Rika, for sharing your insights and journey with us this morning. And a big, big, big thank you to everyone in the audience for joining us as well. We hope that you are encouraged and that you're inspired and that you're also excited for the next 4 days of discussions that are coming up as we discover new possibilities in the public sector. Coming right up, we have a workshop on how the cloud is making cybersecurity accessible. And immediately after that, we have a panel on digital defense and cybersecurity, featuring cyber superstars, including Mihoko Matsubara from NTT Corporation Japan, as well as Gwenda Fong, who is the Assistant Chief Executive of CSA Singapore. So do stay tuned for that. We hope you have a lovely time here at the festival with us, and I'll see everyone soon.